Hi everyone, my name is Katie Fletcher and I'm going to talk to you about the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, or IPEDS, and how you can use it in your assessment practice in higher education. IPEDS is an institutional survey conducted by the U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics. If your higher education institution receives federal financial aid, it must report data to IPEDS each year. Over 7,500 institutions take the IPEDS survey, and data has been collected since 1993, which makes it a great source for longitudinal data. You can use the IPEDS Data Center to compare institutions to each other, create trend reports, find descriptive statistics, download data files, and more. The IPEDS survey collects data on institutional characteristics, institutional prices, enrollment, in student financial aid, degrees and certificates conferred, student persistence and success, and institutional human and fiscal resources. Although IPEDS is great for comparing institutions, you can also use it to just find data on your own institution in each of these 7 areas. You can get this data from your institutional research or IR department, but if it's not readily available, it might be quicker to access it through the IPEDS system. You can also use IPEDS data to compare an internal program to the entire college or university. For example, the Honors College might want to know how their retention and graduation rates compare to the institution as a whole. If they track their own program's retention and graduation rates, they can use IPEDS to find out the rates for the university. Another great use for IPEDS data in assessment is benchmarking. When we engage in benchmarking, we're asking the question, how does my institution compare to peer institutions, and where can we improve? Benchmarking helps us find areas of strength and weakness and allows us to compare trends. A best practice in benchmarking is to establish a set of peer institutions and use the same peer set for all benchmarking assessments. This way, you aren't comparing your institution to different institutions for different assessments. However, you should periodically review and update your peer set using current data. For example, if an institution has changed Carnegie classification or has increased its enrollment, you may find that it's no longer a peer institution. This case study illustrates the care that should be taken in selecting a peer set. The University of North Carolina General Administration has each campus select a peer set of institutions for assessment purposes. They each select 13 to 18 peer institutions that are in the same Carnegie Basic classification. In addition to Carnegie classification, UNC has established a list of other criteria that they think is important to look at when identifying peer institutions. Some of those criteria include retention rate, graduation rate, degrees awarded, student headcount, and percentage of minority students. After selecting their peer institutions, UNC campuses are also allowed to select up to 3 aspirational institutions. These are schools that they would like to become more like over time. Including aspirational peers in their assessment encourages them to keep setting higher goals. I'm going to take a few minutes to pull up the IPEDS website and walk you through how to access data. I'm also going to show you IPEDS video tutorials that are available through the Association for Institutional Research. Right now, I'm on the main website for IPEDS. The URL is nces.ed.gov/IPEDS, but you can also find it by Googling IPEDS. We're going to click on the green box that says Use the Data. As you can see, there's a lot of different ways that you can use IPEDS data, either by having it create trend reports for you, statistical tables, summary tables, or by downloading the full data sets yourself if you want to run your own statistical analyses. I'm going to walk you through a basic comparison of institutions by creating summary tables. So in my summary tables, I would like to use the final release data. So let's say for my assessment that I am looking at my institution to figure out if our Black and Hispanic students are graduating at similar rates as our white students and how those compare to our overall rates. In addition, I also want to compare our graduation rates to peer institutions to see how we do in comparison. So the very first thing I need to do is to select my comparison institution. This is the institution that I work for. So I'm going to type in Sam Houston. The next thing I want to do is select my peer set of institutions. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can either type in their names or unit IDs if you know those already. You can upload a file of their information, or you can search for it by groups or by variables. I'm going to do by easy groups just to make things simple. So right now you can see that the Sam Houston information is selected up at the top because that is my comparison group. or my comparison institution, sorry. It's also selecting 2014 as the data collection year. I can change that if I want older information, but I want the most up-to-date, so I'm going to leave that alone. Next, I can select either specific types of universities, special missions, but I'm going to do special characteristics. So the first thing I want to do is define the Carnegie Basic Classification. The nice thing about selecting a comparison institution is that it highlights in bold and in orange the criteria that apply to that institution I selected. So we are a doctoral research university. I also want to select only schools that have first-time, full-time undergraduates. You can see as I check boxes that it's going to lower the amount of institutions that are in my pool right now. Sector, I'd like to look at public four-year universities. And I'm also interested in institutional size, just so that I'm pulling from schools that have similar populations as mine. So now that I have 16 institutions, although this includes Sam Houston, I'm going to go ahead and click search because I feel that's a pretty good size. Next, I'm going to continue to step 2, which is to select my templates. Now, because I'm interested in graduation rates over four-year institutions, I'm going to select the template that applies to that. And I also really want to look at race ethnicity, so this first option is the one I'm going to go for. Now, again, I want the most up-to-date information, so I'm going to keep it on 2007, but I do want to change this to show percentages because that will help me to compare institutions better than just having the number of students. I'm going to go ahead and click display. And now this is a summary table of the 15 different institutions that met my criteria plus Sam Houston. And Sam Houston will be down here highlighted in yellow. I wish it was up at the top. That would be more convenient, but you know, this is how it goes. So I can see the second column is going to be Black non-Hispanic students. The fifth column is Hispanic students. The sixth is white non-Hispanic, and the last column shows total. I'm going to scroll down to Sam Houston. So you can see our total graduation rate, 6-year graduation rate for bachelor's degree recipients was almost 44%. Our African American, Black students, non-Hispanic was almost 46%. That's fantastic. That's better than the average. Our Hispanic students are at about 40%, and our white non-Hispanic students are about 44%. So that's just actually really close to the average. So now that I know Sam Houston's rates, I can compare them to other institutions. So the next one on the list is Texas A&M University Commerce. So I can see their total 6-year graduation rate is 37%. That's lower than ours. And then you can compare by ethnicity. So this is the their Black non-Hispanic students, their Hispanic students, and then their white students. So it looks like their white graduation rate is lower than ours. The Black graduation rate is lower than ours, but just by a little percent, a little bit. It looks like the biggest difference in this overall graduation rate is coming from the amount of their white students who are graduating with bachelor's degrees. So now that I have this summary table, if I wanted to download it, I could go back and click on Modify Options to do download instead. I can also save this session if I want to be able to go back and see the full and rerun this data without having to check everything. The next thing I wanted to show you is the online IPEDS video tutorials through AIR. While most of these are designed for institutional research professionals because it has to do with submitting IPEDS and collecting the data, these down here, the data tools tutorials and related IPEDS tutorials, these are really helpful if you're trying to find this data for your own assessment purposes. If you need assistance using the IPEDS data and the video tutorials aren't helpful, you should also contact your institutional research office. They're usually the people who submit IPEDS reports each year, so they'll likely know how to access and use this information. These are the references I used in this podcast. I hope this was a helpful introduction to the IPEDS system and that you'll be able to use this in your assessment practice.